Hello everyone, I'm the co-director of Universal News Frontier, and welcome to this explainer. Today we really need to sit down and have a serious kitchen table conversation, because right now the global energy landscape has literally been thrown into a blender, and the macroeconomic shockwaves, they're hitting every single one of us right where it hurts the most.
Let's get right to the stark reality of it. Your bank account is basically being held hostage by a 21-mile-wide strip of water. Yep, 20%. That is the exact amount of the entire global oil supply that has been suddenly and violently immobilized in the Persian Gulf.
And because of that massive bottleneck, we are currently standing just 48 hours away from one of two completely different realities. Either a stabilizing global peace deal or an absolute economic meltdown with gas prices crossing thresholds we can't even imagine. So in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what this geopolitical standoff means for your future, your daily commute, and your grocery budget.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the Strait and the Squeeze. Let's track how we got here so incredibly fast.
Well, this current crisis is the direct fallout from Operation Epic Fury, which was a U.S.-led military campaign against Iran that kicked off back on February 28, 2026. In response to that campaign, Tehran initiated a full-scale blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. We're talking sea mines, anti-ship missiles, swarming tactics, the whole nine yards. That move effectively trapped an estimated 1,600 commercial ships. And the immediate result? The national average for gas shot up 37% in roughly 5 weeks. We went from a relatively normal baseline of around $2.98, crossed the $4 mark in early April, and then eventually peaked at an agonizing $4.52 by May 5th.
And this brilliantly illustrates what a massive macroeconomic event actually looks like at the micro level, right at your kitchen table. Because this isn't just some number blinking on a Wall Street trading floor. It is essentially an inflation tax. For typical two-driver household, these price hikes are actively chewing up about $150 of your discretionary spending every single month. That is cash vanishing straight out of your pocket, all because of a naval blockade halfway across the world.
Now this is where it gets really interesting, because your local geography heavily dictates exactly how much pain you're actually feeling. Look at the crazy disparity here. California is bearing the absolute brunt of this crisis. Their averages are soaring to $6.14 a gallon, heavily influenced by their local regulations and direct exposure to world oil prices. But then you look over at Oklahoma and it's sitting at $3.27. Why the massive gap? Well, the Gulf Coast and the Great Plains are plugged straight into domestic crude and pipeline networks, creating a huge buffer that protects them from the worst of this international shock.
Moving right along to Section 2, the hidden food shock. This is how the crisis is rippling through the rest of the economy.
What we're actually looking at here is known as the logistics transmission belt. Here's the thing. While gasoline always grabs the headlines, diesel is the actual beating lifeblood of our freight system. And diesel just spiked 45% to over $5.45 a gallon. Now, trucking companies operate on incredibly thin margins anyway. So when diesel surges like that, they instantly slap aggressive fuel surcharges onto all their routes just to survive. There's a slight cost lag, usually taking a few weeks to hit the consumer, but the end result is that grocery prices just jumped 2.9% in barely 4 weeks. That is exactly how a naval blockade immediately inflates the cost of a carton of eggs at your local store.
And unfortunately, it actually gets worse. We are staring down a devastating agricultural pincer movement. You see, the Strait of Hormuz isn't just a highway for oil, it is the primary global transit route for ammonia and nitrogen-based fertilizer precursors. The moment those shipments stopped, fertilizer prices exploded globally. Right now, a staggering 78% of U.S. farmers are saying they simply cannot afford their full nutrient requirements for this current planting season. So honestly, even if the entire conflict ended today, massive food price inflation is pretty much already baked into the economy for the rest of 2026 and well into 2027.
Which brings us to Section 3, the 48-hour ultimatum. We are basically standing right at the edge of the cliff here. The Trump administration has deployed several tactical levers trying to mitigate this economic fallout. They've ordered the release of 172 million barrels from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. They signed a temporary waiver of the Jones Act, which helps West Coast refineries get easier access to domestic crude. And militarily, they launched Project Freedom, which was a naval escort mission designed to protect commercial vessels. That mission actually saw direct combat, reportedly sinking 7 Iranian fast attack craft before it was abruptly paused to allow some breathing room for diplomatic negotiations.
So, the absolutely crucial point right now is the massive gap in these current stabilizing deal negotiations. On one side, the U.S. has laid out non-negotiable red lines, an immediate total halt to nuclear enrichment, full dismantlement of the infrastructure, and instantly declaring the Strait of Hormuz open to all shipping. On the other side, Iran's 14-point counterproposal offers a 30-day phased exit to lift the blockade, but explicitly pushes any discussions regarding their nuclear program to a much later phase.
That massive disconnect is exactly why President Trump issued this strict 48-hour ultimatum, making it clear that if they do not agree, the bombing starts again at a much higher level and intensity. It's a very stark warning. Global financial markets are reacting with this extreme, yet incredibly fragile optimism. I mean, Brent crude actually plunged below $100 a barrel purely on the hope that a breakthrough is coming. But analysts are warning us that if this deadline passes without ink on paper, that entire market rally evaporates overnight.
So let's talk about Section 4, predictions for the pump, and look at the realistic floors and ceilings going forward. If history is any guide, and looking closely at the latest data from the Energy Information Administration, we can make our first solid prediction, the sticky $4 floor. Listen, even if a perfect, flawless peace deal is signed tomorrow morning, gas is not returning to $3 a gallon anytime soon. You have to physically clear a massive waterway of highly dangerous sea mines, you have to renegotiate incredibly complex maritime insurance contracts, and you have to rebuild completely depleted global crude inventories. So the EIA's forecast of $3.70 for 2026, that is likely the absolute floor, definitely not the ceiling.
But here is prediction number 2, and it's the bigger picture we really need to worry about. If these negotiations fail and the U.S. resumes higher intensity bombing, we are going to rapidly cross what economists call the demand destruction threshold at $5 a gallon. At that specific price point, American consumer behavior just fundamentally breaks. People transition from grudgingly paying at the pump to drastically slashing their vehicle miles and totally canceling their discretionary spending elsewhere. If we cross that line, it absolutely triggers a forced global recession.
And that brings us to Section 5, the community loop. We are clearly at a historic crossroads.
So this is where I want to hear directly from you. The U.S. is demanding immediate nuclear dismantlement to open the strait, but Iran wants that 30-day phased exit. Should we take the 30-day deal just to immediately drop gas prices and ease the crushing pressure on American families right now, or is that simply giving Iran a strategic window to rearm and delay? Let's argue it out in the comments. I really want to see your specific predictions down below. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and make sure you stay focused out there.
An investment in knowledge pays the best interest, so why not invest in this channel? Click like and subscribe for more.